so many residents here in the room. When we do something like this, we always wonder if anybody's going to show up. So first, I want to thank you for showing up. I want to thank you for listening and reading our communication that we have put out. We try really hard to communicate out from us on the local government to you, the residents of Fanwood. And tonight makes me feel pretty good that you're listening. So I'm Colleen Marr. I have the privilege and the honor of serving as your mayor. Tonight, I want to also point out Ms. Councilwoman Trish Walsh that's here to support Councilwoman Kathy Mitchell. And I'm going to ask him to stand. We have a new business administrator that is, I think, in your second week. In his second week. So please give a nice warm welcome to Jesse Moman. Jesse is our new business administrator that came to us as an assistant bee over in Millburn. So now he is in the office full-time, and so he runs the day-to-day business. So if you do have things that come up and you can't get in touch with me or any of your elected officials, Jesse is here. So tonight, this should be viewed as one of two public meetings on the Fanwood Master Plan, the re-examination of our master plan. And what is a master plan? A master plan is actually a document. It's a physical document that serves as a guiding principle for what we believe to be important and true in the decisions that we make when we govern. And where do we see those decisions actually take form? You would see them at the planning board with land use decisions, when we have conversations, when we say, is this consistent or not consistent with the master plan? You would hear us talk about principles when we make decisions with ordinances. And what is an ordinance? An ordinance is a law that we pass legally on the local level. When we decide that there's something that we want to institute, we ask ourselves, is this consistent or not consistent with the master plan? And there's several elements or different chapters to the master plan, which is why you're here tonight. So in 1998, we had our full last master plan. But we also have to update it, and they call it a re-examination of the master plan. The last time that we did that was 2021, in February of 2021. And then along the way, we also have a plan that has to deal with affordable housing. So this is the plan that also, if you watch what's happening in the state of New Jersey with affordable housing and development and sort of housing units that each community is responsible for introducing, and the types of those affordable housing that we are responsible to make sure that our community is more or less open to anyone that wants to live here. You have basically the master plan amendment, which is your housing plan element. So I think it's important just to start off from that place so you sort of understand ultimately what we're trying to do here. And tonight, your voice matters. So along the way, we don't do this by ourselves. We hire a consultant. And tonight, to my left here is Carolyn Ryder, who's from T&M Associates, who will be actually going through the PowerPoint presentation. It's a relatively short PowerPoint presentation because the idea is to hear from you, not talk at you, but hear from you with respect to the different elements of the master plan. Also here tonight, because the master plan sort of resides and gets voted on at the planning board, we have a planning board subcommittee, which is members of the community like yourself that serve as a volunteer. So on our master plan subcommittee, we had Paul Martyr, who's not able to be here. Leslie Cronstack, where's Leslie? There's Leslie. Whitney Chelman, there she is, Whitney's in the back. And our alternate was Matt Jukes, who also serves in the back, also serves as the chairman of our planning board. So that's a plug for anybody that always wishes to get involved. We've got a lot of boards and commissions that we're always looking for someone. So I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn. We're going to go through the PowerPoint, and then we're going to open it up for questions. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Caroline Rader with T&M Associates. Just quickly before we start, there's so many people to help make tonight happen, and I want to thank everybody. First of all, members of the council and members of the planning board, thank you so much for this opportunity to help to let us help you as you prepare your master plan update. Yes. The new administrator, thank you for your help thus far and all the help I know you're going to be giving me as we go through this process. Pat Hoynes, who is always there for any little thing and big thing that I need. Your borough engineer, Antonios, thank you for everything. In addition, and I'll speak to this as well, I've had communication, or my staff has, with so many of your municipal employees from the police department, economic development, the fire department, the rescue squad, and so thank you to them, as well as various commissions. I've spoken with members from the Historic Preservation Commission, the Recreation Commission, and Environmental Commission. Those are forthcoming. And again, thanks to all for being involved, for helping us out. I'd also like to point out that the borough has partnered with a Penn State capstone student who has assisted with, apparently did a great job assisting with getting the word out tonight. He's also going to be helping us with some very specific research with respect to the master plan. So where's Mike? Raise your hand, that's Mike. Fabulous, make sure you say hello. I'm hoping, if you didn't have the chance yet, we have 6 boards in the back. Perhaps at the end you can go take a look. Those are all draft maps for our plan, that some of the work we've done. I'm going to say the word draft because it could be subject to change as we go through this process that I'll be talking about. Antonio? All right. So, just real quick, that's me, Caroline Ryder. I'm the planning group manager for T&M Associates. I have over 2 decades of planning experience, primarily working with municipalities like Fanwood, helping them with their master plans, their zoning ordinances, affordable housing, etc. I have a fantastic staff, and I have 2 members here with me tonight, Tim Jensen, Owen Calvert. Please make sure you say hello. They're over there.
Do you need help with that?
Oh, there you go. Wrong way. There we go. Thank you. Sure, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Would it be better on the other side? Would it be better on the other side?
Yes, please. That would be awesome.
Of course. So a couple of people did stop me before we started. What is a master plan? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The purpose of tonight is to get more information and input. What is a master plan? Why is Fanwood having us prepare a master plan? What has Fanwood done regarding its master plan? And then I'm hoping we're going to have a discussion about Fanwood's desirability, its strengths, and also the challenges that Fanwood faces. So as the mayor mentioned, Fanwood has adopted some master plans along the way. I'll figure this out by the end. All right, so we'll talk about what is the master plan. A master plan is a policy document. This is the vision for Fanwood going forward in terms of land use, parks, recreation and open space, historic preservation, and other subjects we'll be touching on. This outlines the future vision. It is entirely possible this master plan could be your master plan for 2 decades. Your last master plan was prepared and adopted in 1998. A master plan contains several reports, mini reports, we refer to as elements. There are some that are required and many that are optional. The required elements are the land use plan element and the statements of goals and objectives. There are also a lot of other elements that are not required but optional that we'll be talking about that we're going to be including. The planning board is the entity that adopts your master plan. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. This is done at a public meeting with required notice. And a master plan, as the mayor indicated, must be re-examined every 10 years. And Fanwood has done that. It's on the schedule. And its last re-examination report in 2021 recommended that the borough prepare a new master plan. So I believe this process probably started then. So Fanwood's current master plan was adopted in November of '98, and as I indicated, last re-examined in 2021. The current plan contains a statement of goals and objectives, a land use plan, historic preservation, community facilities, and so everyone's clear what that is. That includes your firehouse, library, municipal building, DPW, etc. I believe one of our maps back there is of the community facilities. Utilities, open space and recreation, circulation, which is roadway network, and other ways of transporting, mass transit, bicycle lanes, etc., things like that. Housing element, fair share plan, and a recycling plan. Now, the housing element, as Mayor indicated, was last prepared in 2017. The housing element actually contains a lot of interesting demographics about population and housing, households, journey to work, things like that. The housing element is paired with the fair share plan. The fair share plan dictates and describes a municipality's affordable housing obligation and what that town is doing to meet its obligation. Fanwood, by my understanding and what I have read of your housing element, has done everything it's supposed to for its round 3 affordable housing obligation. That's what's in your 2016 and 2017 housing element. We are coming to the end of round 3. As someone asked us about this before the meeting started. Round 4 does start in July of 2025. There will be another round of your housing element and fair share plan at that time. However, right now, today, we don't know what your affordable housing obligation is going to be. So all we can do is continue to implement and work towards meeting your requirements of your round 3 plan, which is exactly what Fanwood is doing. So the master plan update, what are we working on? So we're currently preparing an updated master plan for the borough. We're going to have everything listed here is going to be included in the new master plan. Anything in bold is new. Anything not in bold is what's called an update. So what is going to be new is a statement of goals and objectives, the land use element with the climate change related hazard vulnerability assessment, which is a mouthful, and a new requirement from the state that must be included in your land use plan. Any new land use plan from a certain point in 2021 must have this climate change analysis done. We do have a couple of the maps in the back that we've started this analysis. Green buildings and environmental sustainability element, historic preservation element, statement of plan relationships. So what that is, that's just something that we need to include at the end. That is a comparison of our plan, of Fanwood's plan, against those of all your, basically 2 adjacent municipalities, as well as the county plan and the state plan. The community facilities, utilities, open space, circulation, and recycling are all going to be updates. The housing plan element is basically going to be a reference to your 2017 plan. That's pretty much going to say what I just said, that the borough's done everything it needs to do and should be doing to address its affordable housing obligation. We will also include new census data for 2020 where it is available. Yes, we are in 2023, but not all census data from 2020 is out yet. Each month, a little bit more gets is released, so we'll see where we're at and what we're able to include. This plan is not being prepared in a vacuum. We are out and talking to people and involved in the community. First, we have a master plan subcommittee. I have a couple members here tonight. We have had regular meetings and contact. The subcommittee members have reviewed every draft report that has been prepared to date, as well as all of our mapping. We've also had very lively discussions, and from these discussions, we're starting to formulate the goals and objectives for the plan, as well as other plan element updates. Public outreach sessions, like tonight, where we're hoping to hear from everyone and have everybody weigh in about the master plan. There will be a second session. We don't know exactly when yet. I would anticipate it would be sometime at the beginning of the year. And at that point, our draft plan will be very far along, I would anticipate. And we can have discussions about content versus tonight is more about what is the plan and how are we preparing it. Again, as I indicated, I've met with or am meeting with historic preservation, environmental. I'm trying to set up a meeting with Recreation Commission. I've had one meeting with the planning board thus far, a kickoff meeting. I would anticipate we will have at the end, when our draft plan is available, two meetings. The first one would be a meeting where the plan is discussed, but no formal action is taken. The second meeting would be hopefully for adoption. When a master plan is adopted or considered for adoption, there is required notice that must be done to the newspaper, to adjacent towns, to the county, and to the state as well. The plan would be available for public review at the town hall, at Borough Hall, and also because if the borough wants, we could put it on the website as well, so that everyone can see it, read it, review it, etc. We also had contact, as I indicated, with many borough departments, as well as New Jersey Transit, the county, and your school district. So this is an example of one of our maps. I just want to talk about what we've been doing, the environmental constraints map, which also is available in the back. The map that we have in the back actually will have street names on it. It got just too crowded for the PowerPoint to include the street names. But this shows us some of the environmental constraints, including areas prone to flooding, steep slopes, etc. This is a land surface temperature map that will be part of our climate change analysis. Basically, the red areas, sorry, I'm trying to, the more yellow the map is, the hotter the land surface temperature is. The more red the map is a cooler area. So this, who knows what this is? Anyone know what this is? Can you see? The Nature Center. So the Nature Center is not going to be a very warm place. Why?
Trees.
It is nature.
There you go. So there's probably not a lot of impervious. And there's probably not a lot of buildings, but there are, somebody said trees, 3 of you said trees, I think. That's what's there. Go back up. So in addition to this mapping, and that's here, and in the back, I also want to tell you, just update you, we've been working on several of the updates. They're almost all completed, thanks to the help of your borough engineer, your commissions, and others. We're moving along now with the historic preservation, the green element, and the land use plan. And we are really on track, as I indicated, to be completing this and coming to our next public information session at the beginning of the year. So this is the point where I'm hoping we can all have a discussion about Fanwood. We put together a list, Fanwood's desirability. What makes Fanwood a really great place to live? What do you like about it? Some of these categories are from presentations we've done elsewhere. Some are because of what we know about Fanwood. Some came from the subcommittee meetings that I've been having. So I'd like to have a discussion. I'm hoping we can engage. What makes Fanwood a great place? What would you like to see in the master plan strengthen? What should we have more of? Thank you.
So we moved here because of the train. The train to New York.
Do you want me to talk? She said the train.
The train to New York, and I'd love to see a single seat for every ride.
You may see that on our next slide, and when we get to challenges. The train, mass transit, circulation, right? That's one of the elements of the master plan. What else? I know what I like about Fanwood. I like your downtown. I've been here a few times for meetings for the planning board and for the subcommittee. I like to walk around your downtown and eat the restaurants there too. A couple. What else? I see a hand in the back.
It's got character. It's got character, 3-lane streets, You know when you're driving through Fanwood, it has a distinct feel, and it's also super walkable.
Super walkable. This is a planning term, but there is a there, right? You know where you are when you come into Fanwood. There's a there. I knew I'd use that master's degree. And you know when you're coming into Fanwood, isn't Fanwood the tree town, the tree city? Yes. Yes. Over 30 years, that's right. What else?
I like that we're this small little, suburb within Scotch Plains. So I like that we can reap the benefits of the town surrounding us.
So you're saying a very small town feel, but there's a lot available close by, right?
Yes.
And you're connected to Scotch Plains with the schools, with your recreation sports, right?
Right.
And then if you even want to go to the grocery store, you're going to Scotch Plains.
No.
You're going, okay, so thank you. I learned something. You're going out of town, but so you have the there, and it's a nice small town, but there's a lot available close by too, right?
I also like being down the street from Westfield, Trader Joe's. I like that we have that big town, which is tons of restaurants and stuff, and I like being close by.
Location, you're very close. You have a lot close by with that small town feeling.
With the small tax feeling.
That's 2.2 miles away, much higher than the national average of traveling to grocery store.
2.2 miles, I've got it. I think we may talk about that in the next slide also, okay? What else? What else about Fanwood?
We are building a beautiful new library.
You are building a beautiful new library. I've seen it undergoing. And not this slide, if anyone caught the aerials on some of my slides, they were all from Fanwood. So I think there was one of the library on this side. Yes, sir.
Safety. So just being 1 square mile, that's a very easy thing. Not an easy thing, but a small service area for the police department and fire department. Safety.
You feel safe here.
Yeah.
Yes, Matt.
Another thing is community. It really is a place where you know your neighbors, you know them by name, you can chat with them. 3 of my neighbors are sitting in here. It's the North Avenue, sort of, and another one. So everybody knows everybody.
So it's funny you bring that up because the first subcommittee meeting that I had, that's what they talked about, was knowing your neighbors and the sense of community. And some of that can be related, I think, to land use and to development and to what you have here in your built community because of the way that because you have the there, you have your downtown, I don't have a map up, you have your downtown area, you have the way that your street, you have the tree-lined streets, you have an environment that encourages pedestrians, people walking and getting out and getting around, you have the small town feel with a lot of things to do nearby. A lot of these are land use items or land use matters that we may not recognize them as, and that's what's important with the master plan. And to take what I'm hearing and to put into goals and objectives so that your future goals and objectives reflect all the great things I'm hearing tonight. Yes, in the back.
It's regional schools, but we have the 5 elementary schools, so you do get to know your neighbors because ours anyway is so tiny. And my kids have no trouble blending them when they get on to the other, schools at the different levels, the other parts of town. There's not any kind of prejudice that my kids felt.
That's wonderful.
And, also, I like that we have volunteer fire and first aid.
Yes. And they've been very helpful with us and as we've been gathering information and very responsive. Yes, sir.
Architectural elements on many of the houses, very nice.
That's right, and that's something else that gives you a sense of community, the types of houses, with the opportunity for neighbor to neighbor, socialization and just interaction. That's something else that forms your sense of community. Yes, ma'am?
Trees.
The trees. We've been hearing about the trees.
Great shade tree thing.
I've heard you have a great shade tree commission.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I may be the only person that cares about this, but I think Fanwood is not bike friendly. I'm afraid to cross the bridge, like from North Avenue to the Y. If I stay on the sidewalk, there's a huge sign right at South Avenue that I have to get off my bike to go around. So maybe we don't want our kids biking, but under these circumstances, even I'm afraid to bike.
I appreciate your telling me that.
To piggyback on that, there is a lack of sidewalks on Midway. So, we are raising a child on Midway, which has its challenges. So, we have the sidewalk, but there's not on the other side. And it ends,
As far as the quick check.
yeah. So, I don't know how they fix it.
Okay, so the sidewalks and pedestrian, so
Who owns, if you make a,
it's interesting because we have walkable as one of the attributes, but pedestrian safety is going to probably come up on the next slide, and I'm hearing it as well. So that's something. Yes, sir.
Fanwood is kind of like any town USA in a really good way. If you could transplant Fanwood into Montana or Vermont or South Carolina, and it's just, there's something really nice about that. And part of what, it's that way not because it's a big development, it's just the opposite. It's like a 1950s any town USA. The streets aren't straight, you're not on a grid, you've got beautiful houses, they're all different. There's just, every place you turn, there's character. And somehow, the wheels of progress have turned in Scotch Plains, and you start to see, repetitive development after repetitive development in Scotch Plains. You don't really see that in Fanwood. And I think Fanwood has done a really good job of protecting itself and kind of maintaining that feel that you don't really get in a lot of other towns.
These are all wonderful things to hear. And strong planning attributes as well. And why there is a sense of community, the feeling that you're in some place, et cetera, the street formation, and the architecturals as well. These things all play a role. So the next slide, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, like, one more thing, kind of related. So the fact that all the trees that we have here, that means there's a lot of leaves in the fall. And I very much, I appreciate the fact that we can put our leaves out on the street in piles, and they will be picked up fairly promptly. We don't have to put them in bags or deal with them ourselves. So I appreciate that. And I also relate that I often think about the fact that the streets are quite clean. And I think that makes a huge difference in terms of the livability, the walkability. I think the borough does an excellent job of keeping our streets clean.
So what I'm hearing is a really great quality of life too, right? Because the streets are clean, it's a great place to live, you know your neighbors, it's a wonderful community. And those small things like keeping the streets clean, picking up the leaves, having lots of trees, they mean something and they bring people together, absolutely. It's no surprise that this is such an engaged community and with all the attributes that I'm hearing. So the next slide is challenges, and a lot of this is challenges that we use in basically any town, many towns I should say. Roadway congestion, historic integrity of your historic areas. You don't have a lot of vacant land. The deer population, which although not really a land use issue, is something that comes up all the time. Pedestrian safety, we've had a couple people bring up pedestrian safety. And I know that there are challenges from a pedestrian mobility point of view. So are there any other challenges that haven't been expressed yet that you think we should talk about or you think we should be aware of? Yes, sir.
I don't like the once a year pick up of all the stuff and having to pay extra for that.
So not really a land use matter or a master plan matter, but I thank you. That's actually good to know. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd really like to see a greater degree of coordination with other towns as relates to development in regards to traffic management. Right now, there are certain times of day where you can't get around at all, particularly on 14th Avenue, South Avenue, North Avenue, and that relates not only to Fanwood, but to surrounding towns as well, because they're developing in the same way that Fanwood is.
You're right. The traffic doesn't know where the municipal boundaries are. So I will say in New Jersey, of course, we have home rule. So each town is sort of responsible, maybe that's the wrong word, but development applications are decided and determined at the municipal level, at your planning board level. So it is a challenge to coordinate, as you say, with another municipality. What we will be doing, if you recall, one of the required reports we need to include is a comparison of your contiguous municipalities. I know there's just 2, but we will be looking at that in terms of what our plan, what Fanwood's plan will be recommending, and what is recommended along the borders in the plans of your adjacent towns, if everyone understands that. So I think that's something that it will be considered. But you are correct in that the traffic is a challenge. I can tell you I've experienced it, but not just here. I travel statewide for my job, and it is everywhere. If that's any consolation, I don't know that it is, but it is a challenge. The automobile traffic. But I do thank you for your understanding that Fanwood can only control so much. It can't obviously. It's development of adjacent towns is somewhat out of its grasp. I saw a hand. Yes, ma'am.
If you're a walker, you cannot walk all over town without running on the sidewalks.
Sidewalks. I do know your engineer is here. I do know you've done it.
Sidewalks, or you have to cross heavy traffic streets. But you can't just go out and have a really pleasant walk without encountering those 2 problems.
Those 2 problems. Now, Antonios is here. I know you did a sidewalk audit, right?
We did a sidewalk audit 5 or 7 years ago. We did a sidewalk audit which showed the areas that are in need of new sidewalks or more of repair of sidewalks. Other neighborhoods that really don't need sidewalks because the streets are a little wider may not need sidewalks. But we did do the study and we are looking at it for future projects.
There are also, I know, some grant opportunities for sidewalk improvement. And you know what those grant opportunities always ask? Is this consistent with your master plan? I'm not saying that's actually a joke, it's true. So that's something that I always make sure to pay attention in the master plan and re-examination report and everything is where do you want your sidewalks to go? So Antonios and I are going to be having some discussions about that. What's next? Yes, sir.
So Fanwood's been a great town. My wife and I raised our 2 daughters. They're teenagers now. And I think what sort of drives us crazy as well as our parent friends is the lack of buses. In the morning, you have hundreds of cars driving to every school. Do that twice a day in the afternoon, and it becomes a very unpleasant town very quickly. It's not safe for people riding their bicycles, walking, and quite frankly, I just see parents doing bad things, right? Because everyone's just kind of running around, racing around. So if you just did some simple math, a bus holds 50 kids, 10 buses is 500 kids, which would eliminate probably 300 cars on a daily sort of.
So I will tell you, I don't live in this county. I live in northern New Jersey, and I no longer have school-age kids, but I went through that with my children and the drop-off and the pickup. And we one time got a notification as parents to stop using the elementary school as a cut-through to avoid a bad intersection. So parents do bad things. You're correct. That being said, that is actually a Board of Education decision with respect to the busing. The master plan and the community facilities element will include information on school children and I believe some projections that the school district provides. But that is particularly the extent to that. I also will tell you when we review development applications anywhere and traffic is considered, it is not just a journey to work. It is a school is a known generator of traffic 100%. So you are correct. This does sound like though more of a challenge for your Board of Education.
If there's coordination, then that's what needs to be fixed is the coordination, right? Because parents that have left Fanwood and we stay in contact. Said the best thing about leaving Fanwood is not having to deal with buses, but not the lack of buses leading to traffic. So if there's any way to coordinate those, because I know they have a meeting, we have a meeting, everyone has a meeting, but the same people aren't sitting in that meeting and sort of coalescing around what the problem is. That is probably the biggest bane of existence for every person in this town.
I second the motion.
Yeah.
And to add insult to injury, you're not allowed to stop on certain streets. It might be a Scotch Plains thing, but you're not even allowed to stop to let your kid out or you get a ticket. That's my favorite.
I don't want to be, I'm not here to be negative. I love the town, I'm not here to be negative. But this is what makes parents crazy.
And I can appreciate that, and like I said, no longer have school-age children, but recall it distinctly. I do think this is a Board of Education question. I'm thinking there might be something that we could include in the master plan with respect to that, with a respect to a recommendation, but obviously not in our control, Mayor. I don't know if you-
Yeah, the only thing that I'll say about the busing is that the Board of Education has to provide transportation busing for students who live a certain 2.1 miles right from there. And so that, right, so we don't necessarily get busing in Fanwood because no matter which direction we go, there is, you know, how the crow flies, right? And I've seen, been here long enough to see when they tried to change busing routes on the other side of Scotch Plains and have that just like spiraled. But I do think that, I think it's a state formula that then puts it on the districts, right? Where you have to be to get busing, and anything below that, and then they kind of use, I don't know, Google, I don't know if people have done that, but I understand your sentiment of the traffic and the busing and the lack of busing.
So the mileage is one metric though, but you now have a town, we've been here for 14 years, that has turned over considerably. There's more families, there's more kids, so it's more about density than it is mileage, because you will always lose the math on a mileage metric, right? So,
Understood.
So is the borough prohibited from providing busing for their students? So even if you live within 2.1 miles, the borough, in theory, could provide busing to the schools. And I
I don't
would...
know if everybody wants to pay for that.
No, I agree. So, but I would argue also, it's not just a parents' issue, it's anyone who drives to work
Yes.
between 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning, or anywhere.
When summer's
So maybe the people would be willing to kick in.
Well, I think it's something that we can raise with, whether it's development, whether it's schools, whether it's road congestion, you know, and sort of that piece in the plan.
I agree with you, Mayor. I think there's some opportunities within the master plan to reference this.
I'm going to dovetail off the school conversation, an entirely different issue. So I live in a neighborhood that is midway between Brunner, the middle school, and the high school. And every year, the new drivers use our street and the adjacent streets as racetracks. And there are no stop signs on any of the streets in our area. So nobody stops for anybody. I'm surprised no one's died yet. I know there was a kid that put his car up on my neighbor's lawn several years back because he missed the turn, watched all his buddies bail, so he didn't get hurt. But there's an issue here with driving, and this is now parents. You go out in the morning and the parents are racing to get their kids to school because they've got to get to work. So yes, like the gentleman behind me is saying, we need a little bit of speed control, speed bumps, stop signs.
Okay, that's great. What street did you live on,
I
sir?
live on Oakwood Court.
Oakwood Court? Oakwood Court? So, okay, so
None of the
that's...
streets back here have stop signs. If you,
Okay, so none of the streets have stop signs, and people don't always obey the speed limit, or perhaps don't always drive in a responsible manner, let's say that. So
that's a municipal issue. That's something that we could possibly take some steps.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure we have sidewalks along there, but more kids could walk to school or walk in groups, but that's also community organizational thing, not land use thing. Well, the sidewalks along, is it Pleasant have sidewalks? Is that what the
Pleasant doesn't have, none of the streets back here have sidewalks unless you get over to the Glenwood area.
So I'm hearing a lot of comments about sidewalks, about pedestrians, and things like that. And this is all part of the circulation element, part of our goals of what we're looking for. So I think these are all great comments. Thank you. Thank
The
you.
only thing I'll say about sidewalks is, I've been here long enough to see the backlash of sidewalks also. So I'm gonna throw that out. We put sidewalks on Madison. And that literally was 2 years of hostile conversations. Basically, people looking at me as if I was doing something so terrible to this community And all we were trying to do was take kids off the streets of walking, put them on sidewalks, right? Connectivity. So when we did those sidewalks, and we did them to Madison, and then we connected over, because the idea was also the commuters, because we're a big commuter town, right? So we decided to follow the path. If I come over from the train station, right, on the north side, what's the easiest way to take us over there? We also put sidewalks on Midway, connecting up to the Quick Check, because there never used to be sidewalks there. And that was also like a death trap, right? But that was, when I say hostile, like, but so we, as a governing body, right, and Russ, who's our borough attorney, used to sit with me, I like sidewalks, you know, but also the community then, the residents become responsible for it. And there is a tremendous pushback of people not wanting that responsibility. It's a very, very real thing. So I don't mind having conversations, and we welcome them, like on Shady, right? We knew the street's so narrow, right? And the sidewalks maybe not, but we had this Belgian block to try to at least try to keep the roadway a little like narrow. There's some cut-through streets that will always be cut-through streets, no matter what we do, King, Shady, you know, the patterns are there. We try very hard with the police, you know, for the quality of life and enforcement, and this is good for us tonight to hear where maybe we've got to double back on some things.
Absolutely, great comments.
So, we have children walking on our streets without sidewalks. We have baby
What
strollers.
street?
Any of them that don't have sidewalks. We have baby strollers in the middle of the street and cars that go too fast. That's very dangerous. So I think sidewalks are beneficial. I mean, we want to protect our children. I have a stroller. I live by La Grande Park, which is a four-way stop sign with lights, and nobody pays attention to. I've talked to the police about it more than once.
We both put that in there.
Well, it's good. It's no good at all.
Yes. Okay, so let's switch to parking.
I didn't hear your
Parking.
Parking, and that's neighborhoods. And that's going to become, like, people move in, they have one car, all of a sudden you look around and they have 3, 4. I live in a neighborhood where sometimes there's 9 cars in the driveway.
So I'm not sure if everyone heard, someone said let's shift off sidewalks to parking. That there's a lot of people, statistically, yes, we all have more cars now. That is something that actually the census data shows. People have more cars. Most likely, when your houses were built, people did have 1 or 2 cars. I'm going to take a bet that many of you in your households have more than 1 or 2 cars at your house. So,
And that's going to grow. As time goes on,
So
that's
let's
going
just
to
stay
be
on this
bigger.
for a second,
Yes.
because of the land use that matters. So we've got our engineer, we've got our planning board members here. Part of what we see at the planning board are variances for wider driveways.
Yes.
And it goes back to some of the quality of life and what you like and the characters of the houses, right? And there are times where we don't do that, right? Because it just becomes these double or triple wide driveways and jockeying cars, you know? And so, like, part of what's really important about tonight is it all really begins and ends sometimes with land use, right? And the land use of what we allow or don't allow. Part of the character was, and I'll just like take a moment, when we saw this McMansions that started probably about 15 years ago in some of these communities, our planning board and our governing officials were right on that. I mean, we really changed our zoning, we really held people accountable. We didn't allow them to do some of these knockdowns, and you can still see 1 or 2 that may have popped up before we kind of realized what was going on. But then to the point of the person understanding the characters of the houses, we bring that right in. We bring that like right in.
thank you, Mayor. That's a great point, is the recognition of certain development characteristics and how that plays into the master plan and into your ordinances, which are, of course, adopted by the governing body. But it's important to remember that every time a land use ordinance is adopted, it needs to go to the planning board for consideration of master plan consistency. Every variance, we need to talk about consistency with the master plan. So these things are all related and matter in our discussion tonight. So,
Can we go back real quick to the slide that had the elements, the new elements?
Sure, let's
Because I think that's...
Let's see, yes, I think we should. Oops, no. This slide.
Yes, right? Yes, and why I want to come back to this slide here is because this is some of the things that we talked about sort of organically, right? But the historic preservation plan element is very important to us, right? And so I'd like to sort of hear if anybody has thoughts, you know, when you think about historic preservation or you think about Fanwood, what are things that should be considered?
Thank you, those are great thoughts. One of the maps back there is a historic preservation map as well. Any comments about that? We have a historic district in Fanwood. I know at least one person here lives there.
Yes, we had a library that we had to make sure passed and state historic preservation office because that's actually in a historic district. So at the end of the day, the design actually got approved because it needed to fit in characteristically, you know, which the end result's going to be absolutely beautiful. Yes.
Historic preservation, but it still could be a knockdown, right? You don't have a lockbox on it.
So it can, but we do have an Antonius. I believe someone from the historic preservation. I thought I saw
Joan's here.
Joan.
Oh, where's Joan?
Oh, hi, Joan. So Joan, you recently, right, had an engagement with a property that a developer wanted to come in and knock down, did you not?
That's true. It was an 1852 residence. And that's part of what we want to do. I'd like to strengthen our local ordinance because he wanted to knock this down, build 2 mini mansions. The house was perfectly fine, you know, it was not in knockdown condition. We had a series of, at the time it was COVID, so we had a series of Zoom meetings, and the only thing that I think saved that house was us working with public opinion. That is your greatest strength, is public opinion. If you can get the residents of that, well, we did get the residents of that neighborhood to weigh in on why this was a bad decision, then you have some hope. But whoever said that is correct. I mean, a developer can sometimes do whatever they want.
And it's hard. Yeah, and it's hard. Years ago, we tried to do like transfer development rights, where we could put easements on historic homes, and understanding that there would be a loss of value possibly with the easement of an historic home, and do like credits, and it didn't end up working. It got way too complicated because at the end of the day, those property owners have to play ball. You know.
So to Joan's point, we're familiar with the house in question, but there were a couple of components to that. One, you have a nice house, and it's a beautiful house, and to some extent, I help prescriptive if you want to be on a neighbor there, and of course we would ignore in favor of leaving well enough. But the second element that didn't really go discussed as much, but equally important, is the issue of density. And you know, the houses are placed on pieces of land, especially in the historic district, and were very appropriate for the house back then. And if you start to subdivide, I'm going to say medium-sized pieces of property that can just barely fit 2 things in, now your density goes up, you have more cars, you have all the issues that we were talking about earlier. In addition to, there's a certain openness about a historic district. And you have the trees, you have the lawns, you have all that stuff. It's part of what separates Fanwood from a lot of other places. So I think that's a critical component to this discussion.
Fully admitting, I don't have a lot of knowledge around the historic ordinances and such, but it would seem to me that we have a beautiful train station. That historic train station is beautiful and such, and to be able to not necessarily use the train station, but maybe push for mixed use, like a mobile coffee stand or food truck and things that don't necessarily take away from the historic value, but also add an element to the commuters and the land space and such.
We've heard that in the past. About 2 years ago, we did a planning study where we tried to talk about the connectivity from the south side, south to north, right? And again, try to coming over the bridge and how we can connect the town. And part of it was activation, right? Can you activate something along the train station? Can you activate the fact that we have the carriage house a little bit more, right, which is a cultural arts center. The library was a big component, right? And I think with the new library, the pedestrian access is key. Part of our challenges is that South Avenue is a state highway, and we have been fighting for years to try to put crosswalks in, to really push, get people over, and they just refuse to do that for us. But we haven't given up hope. But we know that connectivity and doing more with some of the commuters is on our radar.
And I'll fully admit, I'm saying that because 1C ride is huge, and so it plays into part of it to a degree. But, yeah, not taking away from the historic aspect of it, but, you know.
And the connectivity is so important in master plans I've been involved with recently. Between your public buildings, between your open space and your public buildings, connecting them somehow either via pedestrian or just visually, it's a big component, especially in a built-out town like Fanwood, a town that doesn't have a lot of vacant land.
So one of the things I just want to mention too, when you look at the community facilities plan element, right, that's just not your parks, it's everything. And, I laugh that I've been here and now things long enough that I really see that the library is the first building that the community has really built in decades, probably almost 45 years since this town has had a new community building. The next one is actually looking at our public works facility. Because if anybody has been to our public works facility, it is literally falling down. If you went to buy your candles, right, for your luminaries, right, you will see so investing in some of our community facilities is important to the overall quality of life here. And like I said, the library is where we are now, and the conversation on what we do with public works. Climate change. Climate change. I want to talk about that. I want to hear what you have to say. One of the maps in the back shows 12 areas that we are looking at that are flooding, never flooded before, right? We've got issues where we never saw them before. It's a real thing, the heat map, right? That's why the state is mandating this climate change hazard vulnerability assessment. It's not a choice for us. So I'm interested in hearing what you're seeing, because this is a very important new element for us.
And within that section, what we do, because this is new, we identify, there's very specific steps that we are required to do. We have to identify climate change threats like flooding, as well as hurricanes, drought, sea level rise, etc. We have to do what's called a build-out analysis of the town. We have to analyze your roadways and your community facilities as they relate to potential natural hazards. We have to see how all this impacts land use, the master plan, your community facility is very, very important. So this is, as the mayor said, a new requirement of the land use plan element. Some of our mapping, we've started the process with the mapping, but I did hear some talk about flooding. I did hear some people say that they have some flooding issues on their street when we get a heavy storm.
So, obviously it relates to what you said earlier, which is the more, for instance, driveways that you have, the more runoff you're going to have, the more flooding you're going to have. So controlling development and making sure there's more grass and more absorption through the land is going to reduce the amount of flow.
So everybody on the planning board, right? Don't we talk about that? Every residential application that is a big piece of what we try to balance with people who want to invest, right, or they want to expand, if they want Fanwood, right, they want to add the room on, right, but that the overall percentage is we try to stay true.
Well, I live in a neighborhood that's been flooding for 50 years, off and on, The town does something, it doesn't work. They do something, it does work. They cut down every piece of green on the library property. Is that going to add to the flooding? We hired somebody, and I went to the meeting, it was virtual, and I wasn't with it enough to be able to speak, so I wasn't allowed to. Other towns let their seniors speak if they didn't know how to use the virtual equipment, and I didn't. And this gentleman said, as far as he knew, there was no flooding in front of the library. I wonder if he ever looked afterwards, because there's been flooding there that I know of. I've lived here 50 years, and there's been flooding off and on since then. He takes a job, but he doesn't know this flood. He doesn't find out.
That's one of the areas.
Just out of curiosity, how did the drafts of the flood maps come about? Because, in looking at the draft of the map, there's a lot of areas that actually flood that aren't recorded on that map, so.
Yeah, what are we?
So a lot of that was Public Works telling us, right? A lot of that was community outreach, right? Neighbors, right? Being invited in, coming over, especially over right the Glenwood area, over probably the last like 3 years.
Because, you look at that map and I can say, that area that's the basin, which is really the retention basin.
Yes.
Behind Borough Hall and in front of Russell Road and down Watson.
Yes.
That floods all the time. It comes down Martine, it comes down Russell from north.
Yes.
And they have barricades even on Russell
Right.
because of the downwash and the flooding. That's not on the map.
Right.
Well, and I just want to make sure, like, that is a known, that whole basin is supposed to be a detention basin. I don't know if it's designated as such, but it should be.
No, it
should be.
That's a detention basin, right?
I don't know how well it works right now, but it is one of the solutions we're talking about in this plan that we're preparing.
But the one behind Borough Hall is a detention
It's
basin.
meant to be a detention basin. I don't know how well it works, but it was designed as a basin at some point.
Okay. Because just saying there's environmental rules and regulations that you have to keep up on that.
Right.
There's probably other areas of Fanwood that do the same thing, so.
And these things are going to get worse, because we know our storms are getting worse. So with that, these problems are going to get worse. They're not going to go away.
Which is why they have it here. So the climate change piece of the master plan is a standalone piece. What we're doing back there is sort of like in addition, it is also being built on, right? So the two of them aren't necessarily fully connected, meaning that we wanted to look at certain areas in the town, and then this came along, and this is a requirement. So part of the requirement or the language may be to be looking at specific areas in addition to the ones that we have already identified.
Yes, that, we'll have to see what our analysis shows, but yes, you're 100% correct in that, Mayor, yes.
Okay. So I want to just over there to someone that hasn't heard from yet.
So if we're including floodplain areas, I take it we're including this park because the area known as tennis court. Yeah, I'll say no more. Cultivating.
That's going. It's going. We can't figure out why. We tried to figure out why that floods.
Well, in all due respect, Mayor, last year's Fanwood Day, I spoke to a council member who assured me, the gentleman, who assured me that that was to be addressed before the end of the year. That was last year.
The tennis courts?
Yeah, there was under review and there was action that was to be taken.
Yeah.
I don't know what that action was. He did not elaborate, but
Sure.
we're 14 months past that conversation.
Sure. So let me put a little color on that. So just like we have a master plan for our town, we have a master plan for our parks.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the master plan for our parks, and we look at both, right, is plans that we want to do. This park here has several elements that make up the master plan, right? We have I think we've had now 3 phases. We've had around the park, we've had the skateboard park, then we put in the the basketball, then we did the beloved pickleball, right? Then we did a lot of the new macadam. This piece over here is slated for a gazebo, but which is also, the next phase is a lot of money. Part of what we want to do is a lot of money. So part of what takes a little longer, to be honest with you, is that we try to cobble together grants. So part of what we try to do is not always do it on the backs of the taxpayer either, to be perfectly honest. There is a plan to rip that out. We have been, I don't want to speak for the Rec Commission, if anybody's here from the Rec Commission, but we've gone back and forth with, do we do more pickleball courts? Do we put a passive, just green space and make that just like a big gazebo?
Green space.
All right, I'm all right. Green space.
Gazebo's going to bring the kids in the water. Pickleball has been a great thing. I've been here since 2005 and this thing's been underwater. I couldn't play one time with my daughter.
I've been here since.
So don't you pass it? Don't you let's do something with this thing? Pickleball courts are awesome. Right, and add more.
Understood. Yes, and that.
I turn it into a dog park. I rip it up, fill it up with dirt, plant grass, and where you got the fence, you make it a dog park. All the people.
I hear passive.
Passive, yes.
Passive.
Hold on, we got somebody back there. Okay.
The climate change hazard, I was just curious if in other towns you've worked in, what they've done to deal with excessive heat. Is there any land use element if you're continuing to have the super hot summers without breaks and without rain? What innovative things have they done? And do you think any of those could be used in the
So that's a great question, and this is such a new requirement of the master plan that we are one of the first, that towns are first doing this as we speak. So what I can say that I would look at off the top of my head is if we know that there's an area that is particularly prone to heat, more prone to heat, that might not be an area that we would want to, say, zone for age-restricted housing. Because as we know, as one gets older, the heat is more challenging, potentially. So that might not be an area that we want to rezone in that manner. So what you do as part of this process is you look at the hazards, you look at the climate change hazards, which are identified, you utilize very specific NJDEP data to do that. And then you look at what could be built, what is the build-out analysis of your town, and then you sort of form these, you make your decisions and you inform the master plan properly. Or if you know that there's an area that's more heat prone, you might want to make sure that you have that there are adequate community facilities in that one particular area, because you might need a cooling off station or a charging station or something like that in some case of extreme weather. Something like that. As you do the analysis, the climate change and the hazards that are out there that are present, and then you consider what could be done in the master plan in light of this new information. So it is literally being done as we speak, starting this process. But thank you, that was a great question about the heat in particular.
Got a question right here.
Next time.
In speaking to some of these commissions, are you going to be speaking to our green team? We have a green team in town, and in terms of them going out and saying, lawn maintenance services are too loud and all that kind of jazz, in terms of the loudness, the noise, the climate change.
Yeah, that's something that I can.
I didn't know if that was included.
I haven't made contact yet, but I have had.
And they're a relatively new group, that has really been energized. So if you don't know that we have a green team, we've got an awesome green team.
So thank you. Yes. Yes, sir.
One contributor to the climate change is pollution. It's certainly the traffic. And in speaking about the school buses and the congestion that all that causes, I just think it's I drop my son off at McGinn and it backs up Martine in both directions, and then the cars just sit and idle. So I think it's really not a good thing for.
You have an anti-idling.
Well, I don't know. But in regards to the parks, again, I live by the Grande Park, so I was curious, are there any other improvements happening, like the basketball courts there? Or I was told I couldn't use the wall play ball on, which everyone does. But I was told in a very not nice way that I was doing vandalism in the park, which is ridiculous. And so are there any other improvements on the way for that park, is what I'd like to know, because I live right across the street.
So we just put in a really beautiful and big playground.
Oh, I know that.
We
I think
just,
it's basketball.
we just did that. The tennis courts are on our radar because we have to keep maintenance with that, right? Because that's a real big deal because the schools use that as their home, right, for their tennis, right? And, you know, there's 5 courts there. That's on our radar. We're always trying to do stuff with our fields. You know, I think we're trying to also look at dugouts, and we've always been trying to talk about enclosures for the dugouts because the kids who play there in the summertime, it gets really hot. You know, that gazebo that we did there, that open, you know, air shelter is one of the best things we did as a community because that gets used all the time and people really like that. We try to keep the building, we only have 2, we try to keep them pretty nice and clean, and we'll do the floors and we'll do all of that. We try to balance sort of money spent on both sides, so both sides of the community don't feel neglected, you know, in addition to the streets, and we're always looking for grant money.
No, I mean, that's why I asked. I mean, the basketball courts here are great. The skate park is great. But, you know, like with Ramaday, I think it's more use on the basketball courts. They're cracked and very old. So I'm just wondering if that's the works.
It's on my things to do list. I know the surface is in pretty poor shape.
So we should look at that for capital.
Yeah.
We should look at that for capital. Yeah, so you know, I want to open it up for a few minutes for anything maybe we haven't talked about, right? Like, so if there's things that you came tonight that you really wanted to talk about that we haven't hit. So, because then we want to make sure you filled out the forms, right? We want to make sure that you understand that this is an ongoing conversation. So anybody that's, I think we're watching from Facebook, can always give us. This is meant to be sort of very interactive. So I'm going to start in the back.
I was just going to say that some of you have been here as long as I have, 40 years, some people less. But when we moved in, the downtown community had a luncheonette, a hardware store, a bookstore, can you believe it? A butcher, a bakery, a everything. And I think the way it was designed, I don't think there's enough parking there if we were a vibrant community. And the way the corner was blocked in where Railside Cafe there's like no accessible parking, not enough, because it's a corner in the back. They took away the places on the street. You can't park on South in that area, and it's vacant, you know. So I think that's a problem, and should it ever become a vibrant downtown again, I don't think that there's...
I don't know what I'm doing here.
I think that the parking would be a problem. So in future development, that to remember to put enough parking in, to be optimistic that we will use it. And also, I would hate to see parking meters. It's just while we're planning.
Yep, nope.
That's one of the reasons you go to families, you can pull in and pull out.
So just a couple things that I think are worth understanding. We are not anticipating putting in parking meters. While we struggle with the municipal taxes, of which you tax over 20%. 80% we do not have any control over. But the 20% that we roughly do, we don't necessarily have a spending issue sometimes as we have a revenue issue, right? And COVID upended a lot of stuff between the courts and the parking, and it's always just like this real struggle that we try to do to make sure that we're affordable. As far as the downtown, I would tell you that we don't have a parking problem. I would tell you that if you want to go down to Fanwood, that you can find a parking space if you want. I would tell you that stores that no longer here, it's a balance of making sure that people go and use them. Everybody says they want certain things, but I've been here also long enough to know that people say some things, but they don't necessarily translate into where they're spending their money because it's always easier to go into the car and do whatever. And I would tell you that things are cyclical. So as we sit here today, right? That empty corner is going to be home very soon to one of the best restaurants in the state of New Jersey. So Jessica's Cafe is moving into that corner property there, and that will be a game changer for our downtown vibrancy because of what they're able to do. And the fact that the vision of creating that spot with the plaza is going to allow him to do some awesome outdoor dining that will be second to none. And we also know that businesses, they will come and they will go, right? I was down today, I'm talking to one of the downtown property merchants, and he's about to set to expand. Can't tell you what he's going to do yet, but there's going to be an expansion, right? I also look at Fabio's, right? Awesome, love Fabio's, right? He's in a good, business model has been good to him. He's moving across the street to the former Shield. He's bought the liquor license, bought the property. It's going to blow it out. It's going to be a beautiful place. That's great for our community because we deserve that, right? So I would say that my job and the governing body's job is to create the bones and to create the atmosphere that is welcoming to businesses and to make sure that the development that we do, that we don't overburden some of the downtown property owners, and we try to make it as streamlined as a process. We have a very, very good reputation here of being business friendly, and we try very hard to make sure anyone that invests in us, that we give back to them. So I just want to continue, yes.
Can I just say publicly, I was not saying that our town is any different with the Central Business District. I was not saying that your administration did. I wasn't coming from there. What I was saying is, if we continue to build apartments and we end up with Jessica's, we're going to need parking, and just please keep in mind.
Family train station after 3 o'clock nights and weekends, 300 spots. After 11, no, we switched that. After 11 o'clock, you can park downtown free at the family train station any day of the week.
That's 11 a.m.
11 a.m.
Maybe it's like a general planning matter question, but also a very specific question. So I live on North Avenue. My property faces the train tracks. And there's been I'm all for the development on South Avenue. But as these things have been built or upgraded, these businesses have been putting these floodlights on the back of their property, which lights up the back of my house. It's like, why can't they just point them down?
Sure.
Especially with the A&P redevelopment.
So we try to do that at the planning board, I would say, as a matter, but if there's an issue that we can talk about that there, because we actually try to do like the candle lights, right, and the width, and we always try
You
to...
can see the lights when you're driving up Hunter. You can see the floodlights from across the train tracks.
So call the zoning office tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll get his information.
Okay.
We'll get his information. We'll make it easy here. Yes.
But light pollution overall was my question.
Yes.
Light pollution. So what is happening with the hole in the ground, AKA Soho?
So Soho is our first product that they did below ground parking. So, which has been more difficult and harder for them to engineer than surface parking. So it's our first product where you will not see the parking, you will actually go down. And that is why it's actually taken longer. But now that they've done that and it's sort of been capped, they're going to come out of the ground pretty fast. And that is a beautiful, beautiful building. Yes, well, retail and some apartments. Yes.
The old recycling centre?
Yes.
I take it that's in the plans for something?
So the concept that we're talking about right now is to move the Public Works facility up to the recycling center, because we feel that that is a better property, because we still want to contain some element of a recycling, because we do take like plastics and we do keep that open for certain things. The building is actually literally falling down. And so there's been discussions about looking at that property, which we own. And it kind of makes sense to us, right, because we don't really own a lot of property, but to look about moving the Public Works up the street. But it's on the map of vacant land.
So if that did go ahead, what will happen to current DPW space?
That is a conversation that we haven't had yet, because we're still seeing if it all works.
Across from Friends, where there used to be a bank, they're doing some work. Thank you, stay at that.
It is actually going to be the new home of Fanwood Pharmacy. So the wonderful thing about living in Fanwood and being the mayor here in Fanwood is that we see people who invest in Fanwood and that they don't want to leave. So you have Mitt, right, who is renting, right, and Fanwood Pharmacy. We should be very proud of ourselves that we actually have an independent pharmacy, right, because I think we've been around long enough to watch them all disappear, and now they're coming back again. So Mitt purchased the former PNC Bank, got his planning board approvals. Planning board is going to be able to keep the drive-through because that was grandfathered in, so you can now just drive in and get your prescriptions and not get out of the car. And so he's actually right now redoing the inside, and he's rocking and rolling. That's great. Yeah, it is great.
Wonderful. Great example of a local business.
We've got many of them.
Someone said mom and pop business.
We got many of them that have done that. So any other final words? I want to be cautious of the time and just really thank you. Yeah, so can we just go back over with the next step? Sure.
So thank you everyone for participating and engaging. I received so many wonderful comments tonight. I hope everybody takes a survey and completes it and leaves it. There's also mapping to look at. Please feel free to talk to myself or my staff, Tim or Owen. The next steps, though, are we are going to take all this information and continue our work as we've been doing. We are going to move farther along with the master plan. There will be another public information session. I would anticipate it would be at the beginning of next year. That would be less about what is a master plan and more about what is Fanwood's master plan. After that, we'll probably make some more revisions, and then we'll be at the planning board level. There should be a meeting just to talk about the master plan, and then a public meeting where adoption of the master plan would be considered. And as I indicated, there is required notice for that. So I would say stay tuned, stay in touch, because we really hope to see this type of turnout again going forward at our next public information session, and certainly at the planning board. So thank you very much.